Admiral Jack Morrison stood at the large window of his ship and watched the stars. His hands were behind his back and his face showed worry. The UES Defiant was humanity's biggest warship, but it looked tiny compared to what was coming. Reports kept arriving from human colonies across the galaxy, and none of them were good news. The alien races had grown tired of letting humans live in peace. For 3,000 years, the Galactic Council had ruled everything. 7 powerful alien empires worked together to control all the star systems. They saw humans as nothing more than bugs that needed to be stepped on. Humans had been traveling between stars for only 200 years, which made them babies compared to the ancient alien races. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan walked up to Morrison with a worried look on her face. She held a datapad in her shaking hands. "Sir, we just got word from New Portland Colony," she said quietly. "The Zephyrians used their planet crackers on the entire settlement. 20 million people are gone. They turned the whole planet into glass and dust." Morrison closed his eyes and felt anger rise in his chest. New Portland had been home to families who just wanted to farm and live quietly. They had never hurt anyone or caused any trouble. The Zephyrian Empire had destroyed them just to send a message to all humans everywhere. "What about Kepler Colony?" Morrison asked, even though he did not want to hear the answer. Kate looked down at her feet. "The crystalline hegemony took everyone. As slaves, sir. Men, women, and children. They loaded them onto transport ships and sent them to work in their crystal mines. The lucky ones will die within a year from the radiation." More reports came in every hour. The Vorthan Confederacy had blockaded the trade routes to human space. No food or medicine could get through to the outer colonies. The Saurian Empire was demanding that humans give them half of all children born on human worlds to serve as soldiers in their armies. Every alien empire was making demands that would destroy human civilization. Morrison walked to his command chair and sat down heavily. He had been fighting aliens for 30 years and had never seen them work together like this before. Usually, the 7 empires spent their time fighting each other over territory and resources. Something had changed, and it scared him more than any battle he had ever faced. The communication system made a sound that meant an important message was coming in. President Henry Davis appeared on the main screen. The leader of humanity looked older than Morrison remembered. His hair had gone completely gray and deep lines marked his face. "Admiral Morrison," President Davis began, "I am calling an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. The Galactic Council has sent us their final demands. They want complete surrender of all human military forces within 48 hours. After that, they will occupy every human world and decide what to do with our people." Morrison felt his stomach drop. Total surrender meant the end of human independence forever. The aliens would control every aspect of human life from that moment on. They would decide who lived and who died. They would take human children and turn them into slaves or soldiers. Human culture and freedom would disappear completely. "Mr. President, what are our options?" Morrison asked, even though he already knew the answer was not good. Davis rubbed his tired eyes. "Our entire fleet has maybe 300 ships. The Council is sending over 2,000 ships to force our surrender. We cannot win a direct fight against those numbers, but there might be another way." Morrison leaned forward in his chair. He had heard rumors about secret projects that the government had been working on for decades, projects so classified that even fleet admirals did not know about them. Maybe humanity had been preparing for this day longer than anyone realized. "Sir, are you talking about the deep space research projects?" Morrison asked carefully. "President," Davis nodded slowly. "Project Omega has been our most protected secret for 50 years, Admiral. We never wanted to use it because the cost would be terrible, but now we may have no choice. The Council has made it clear that they will not accept anything less than complete domination of humanity." Morrison had heard whispers about Project Omega in the highest levels of military command. Some said it was a new type of weapon that could destroy entire star systems. Others claimed it was a defensive technology that could protect human worlds from any attack. Nobody seemed to know what it really was except for a small group of scientists and engineers. Kate Sullivan stepped forward. "Sir, if I may ask, what exactly is Project Omega?" President Davis looked at both of them for a long moment before speaking. It is our answer to the question of what happens when humanity faces extinction. Dr. Lisa Chen and her team have spent decades working on something that will change the balance of power in this galaxy forever. But using it means crossing a line that we can never uncross. Morrison stood up from his command chair. He thought about all the human colonies that had been destroyed or enslaved in the past few months. He thought about the children who would grow up as slaves if humanity surrendered. He thought about what his grandfather would have done when faced with impossible odds during the old wars on Earth. "Mr. President," Morrison said with determination in his voice, "I believe it is time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of when they are pushed too far. Give the order to activate Project Omega." President Davis nodded grimly. "Very well, Admiral. Dr. Chen is already preparing the final systems. But you need to understand that once we take this step, there will be no going back. The galaxy will never be the same again." Morrison looked out at the stars one more time. Somewhere out there, alien fleets were moving toward human space with the intention of ending human freedom forever. But they had no idea what humanity had been building in secret for the past 50 years. They were about to learn that humans could be far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The countdown to humanity's ultimate response had begun. Deep in the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, a secret was hidden that would shake the foundation of galactic civilization. The facility called Forge Alpha looked like just another mining station from the outside. Ships came and went carrying what appeared to be normal asteroid ore. Nobody suspected that beneath the rocky surface lay humanity's greatest achievement and most terrible weapon. Commander Steve Rodriguez had spent 15 years overseeing the construction of something that should not have been possible. He walked through the massive underground chambers where thousands of workers had labored in complete secrecy. The project had required the combined efforts of humanity's best scientists, engineers, and military personnel. Every person who worked here had sworn an oath that they would die before revealing what they had built. The Omega Dreadnought stretched for 12 kilometers through the heart of the asteroid. Its hull was made from materials that human science had only dreamed of 50 years ago. Exotic metals harvested from the cores of dead stars had been shaped using technology that bent the laws of physics. The ship did not just exist in normal space, but extended into dimensions that most races could not even detect. Chief Engineer Amy Parker wiped sweat from her forehead as she completed the final systems check. She had been working for 36 hours straight to make sure everything was perfect. There would be no second chances once the Omega was activated. "Commander Rodriguez," she called out. "All quantum cascade generators are online and stable. The reality anchor arrays are showing green across all boards. We are as ready as we can possibly be." Rodriguez nodded, but his face showed the weight of what they were about to unleash. The Omega was not designed to fight normal space battles. Humanity had learned long ago that they could not match the alien empire ship for ship or weapon for weapon. Instead, they had created something completely different, something that could rewrite the basic rules that governed reality itself. Dr. Lisa Chen arrived at Forge Alpha carrying a small device that looked innocent, but contained the most dangerous technology humanity had ever developed. The consciousness interface matrix was the final piece needed to make the Omega operational. Without it, the great ship would be nothing more than an extremely expensive piece of metal floating in space. "Commander," Dr. Chen said as she approached Rodriguez, "are you absolutely certain that Captain Jake Harrison understands what this will cost him? The neural integration required to control the Omega's systems will change him in ways that cannot be undone. He will no longer be completely human when the process is finished." Rodriguez looked through the observation window at Captain Harrison, who was preparing himself in the integration chamber. Harrison was 35 years old and had volunteered for this mission, knowing full well that he might not survive it. Even if he did survive, he would be transformed into something that had never existed before. A human consciousness merged with technology that could manipulate space and time. "He knows the risks, Doctor," Rodriguez replied. "Captain Harrison has seen the reports from our colonies. He watched the footage of New Portland being turned to glass. He knows that if we do nothing, then humanity will cease to exist as a free species. He is willing to pay any price to prevent that from happening." Dr. Chen activated the consciousness interface matrix, and began the delicate process of connecting it to the Omega's main systems. The technology was based on discoveries that human scientists had made while studying alien artifacts recovered from ancient battlefields. They had learned that consciousness was not just electrical activity in the brain, but something that existed across multiple dimensions of reality. Captain Harrison lay down on the integration table and closed his eyes. Thousands of microscopic filaments extended from the table and made contact with his nervous system. The process was supposed to be painless, but Harrison felt his awareness expanding beyond the boundaries of his physical body. His consciousness began to merge with the vast systems of the Omega Dreadnought. Integration beginning, reported the medical team, monitoring Harrison's vital signs. Neural pathways are establishing connection with the quantum processing cores. Consciousness transfer is at 20% and rising. The Omega itself began to change as Harrison's mind connected with its systems. Lights that had never been activated before began to glow throughout the ship. The quantum cascade generators hummed with power that could reshape matter at the atomic level. Reality anchor arrays came online and began to influence the fundamental forces that held space and time together. I can see everything. Harrison's voice echoed through the ship's communication systems, but it no longer sounded completely human. The quantum threads that connect all matter in the universe. The dimensional barriers that separate one reality from another. I understand now why this ship was built and what it can do. Commander Rodriguez watched in amazement as the Omega's main engines activated for the first time. But these were not normal engines that pushed against space to create movement. They were reality modification drives that convinced the universe that the ship was already where it wanted to be. Space itself bent around the Omega, as if the laws of physics were just suggestions that could be ignored. Integration complete, announced Dr. Chen as she monitored the readings from her instruments. Captain Harrison's consciousness has successfully merged with the Omega's control systems. The ship is now fully operational and ready for deployment. Harrison's voice filled the command center, but it carried harmonics that seemed to come from multiple dimensions at once. I am no longer just Jake Harrison, he said. I have become something new, a bridge between human consciousness and technology that transcends normal reality. I can feel the fear of every human in the galaxy. I can sense the arrogance of the alien empires who think they can destroy us without consequence. The great ship began to move through the asteroid field with impossible grace. It did not follow the normal laws of acceleration and momentum. Instead, it simply decided where it wanted to be, and reality adjusted to make that true. Asteroids that should have blocked its path found themselves in different locations. Space itself seemed to flow around the Omega like water around a stone. Admiral Morrison, Harrison's transformed voice reached across space to contact the human fleet. The Omega Dreadnought is operational and ready to show the galaxy what happens when humanity says enough. The age of alien domination is about to end. Rodriguez watched the massive ship disappear into hyperspace, knowing that the galaxy would never be the same again. Humanity had created something that could challenge the very foundations of reality. The question now was whether they would use this power wisely or whether it would consume them in the process. The secret weapon was ready, and Captain Jake Harrison had paid the ultimate price to make it possible. The Council invasion fleet gathered at the edge of human space like vultures waiting to feed on a dying animal. 300 massive warships from 7 different alien empires hung in the darkness between the stars. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire cities. Together, they represented the combined might of galactic civilization turned against one small species that had dared to resist. Fleet Admiral Zix Thala of the Crystalline Hegemony stood in the command center of his flagship and looked at the tactical displays showing human space. His crystalline body reflected the light from the screens as he prepared to deliver humanity's death sentence. The humans had been given 48 hours to surrender, and that time was almost up. Open communication channels to all human colonies and military installations. Zix Thala commanded in his voice that sounded like breaking glass. It is time to deliver our final ultimatum to these primitive mammals. The message went out across subspace to every human world and ship. Zix Thala's alien face appeared on screens throughout human space. His multifaceted eyes showed no mercy or compassion. Humans, your time of independence ends now. You have refused our generous offer of slavery and servitude. Therefore, we will demonstrate what happens to species that defy the will of the Galactic Council. Surrender immediately or watch your worlds burn one by one. Admiral Morrison received the transmission aboard the UES Defiant. Around him, the bridge. Crew prepared for what appeared to be humanity's final battle. The human fleet consisted of only 50 ships against 300 alien vessels. By every calculation of military strategy, they were about to be completely destroyed. Lieutenant Kate Sullivan looked at the tactical readouts and shook her head. Sir, the numbers are impossible. Even if every shot we fire destroys an enemy ship, we will still be outnumbered 6-1. There is no way we can win a conventional engagement. Morrison smiled grimly and activated his own communication system. All human ships maintain battle formation. Let the aliens think we are making a desperate last stand. They have no idea what is about to happen to their precious empires. Light years away, the Omega Dreadnought materialized at the edge of the Zephyrian home system. The massive ship appeared without warning on the sensor screens of the orbital defense platforms that protected Zephyria Prime. Panic spread through the alien command centers as they tried to understand what they were seeing. Captain Jake Harrison no longer existed as a single human consciousness. He had become something far greater and more terrible. His awareness extended throughout the Omega systems and beyond into the quantum dimensions that connected all matter in the universe. He could perceive the fear of 10 billion Zephyrians as they realized that something impossible had arrived in their star system. Beginning reality revision protocols, Harrison announced, and his voice carried across subspace to Admiral Morrison's fleet. Target designation Zephyria Prime Orbital Defense Grid, initiating quantum cascade sequence. What happened next violated every known law of physics and engineering. The Omega did not fire weapons or launch missiles at the massive defense platforms that surrounded the Zephyrian homeworld. Instead, Harrison simply decided that those structures had never been built in the first place. Reality obligingly rewrote itself to match this new understanding. In an instant, defense platforms that had protected Zephyria Prime for over 2,000 years simply ceased to exist. They did not explode or collapse or get destroyed by any recognizable force. They simply vanished from reality as if they had never existed at all. The quantum threads that held their atoms together were convinced to forget that those atoms had ever been arranged in that particular configuration. Terror spread through the Zephyrian communication networks as military commanders tried to understand what had happened. "Impossible!" screamed General Kethvar as he stared at empty space where his orbital fortresses had been moments before. "Our defense grid had enough firepower to stop 1,000 enemy fleets. How can it simply disappear?" But humanity was not finished with their demonstration. Harrison turned the Omega's attention to the Zephyrian sun itself. The star had been burning steadily for billions of years, providing light and heat to the planets in the system. Harrison reached out with his expanded consciousness and made a subtle adjustment to the nuclear fusion processes happening in the star's core. The change was barely noticeable at first. The sun's energy output decreased by exactly 1%. Not enough to kill everyone on the planets immediately, but enough to cause massive climate disruption. Temperatures across Zephyria Prime began to drop. Crops started to fail. The polar ice caps began to expand toward the equator. "This is our demonstration of humanity's new capabilities," Admiral Morrison broadcast to the Council fleet that was preparing to attack his forces. "Your defense platforms vanished because we decided they should not exist. Your sun grows dim because we have chosen to modify its nuclear processes. Surrender now and return to your home systems, or we will show you what true extinction looks like." The response from the alien fleets was exactly what Morrison had expected. Pride and arrogance had ruled the galaxy for too long for the Council to consider backing down now. Admiral Zixthala gave the order that sealed the fate of his species. "All ships attack immediately. Destroy every human vessel and show the galaxy what happens to those who resist the Council's will." 300 alien warships opened fire at once. Plasma beams that could melt through solid rock lanced across space toward Morrison's small fleet. Quantum torpedoes capable of cracking moons streaked through the darkness. Exotic energy weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds unleashed their fury against humanity's defenders. The battle looked hopeless from every conventional perspective. Human ships exploded under the overwhelming alien firepower. The UES, Liberty disappeared in a ball of superheated plasma. The UES Constitution broke apart as alien weapons tore through its hull. Morrison's forces were being systematically destroyed just as everyone had predicted. But the real battle was not happening in human space at all. The Omega Dreadnought was systematically visiting each of the 7 Empire homeworlds and demonstrating why humanity no longer asked permission from anyone. Admiral Morrison. Harrison's voice reached across the galaxy, carrying power that seemed to bend space itself. The demonstration phase is complete. All 7 Council empires have now experienced what happens when they threaten humanity's existence. Their orbital defenses are gone. Their suns are dimming. Their populations are beginning to understand that they are no longer the dominant force in this galaxy. Morrison watched as space itself began to ripple around the Council fleet. Reality was being rewritten on a massive scale as the Omega Dreadnought arrived in the middle of the alien formation. The great ship materialized like a nightmare made real. 12 kilometers of impossible technology that seemed to absorb light and bend space around its hull. Council fleets. Harrison's transformed voice echoed from the massive vessel. You have 30 seconds to begin retreating to your home systems. After that, I will demonstrate why humanity no longer negotiates with those who threaten our freedom. The alien ships opened fire with everything they possessed. Every weapon in their arsenal struck the Omega's hull. Enough energy to destroy planets poured into the space around the great Dreadnought. The aliens were certain that nothing could survive. Such concentrated firepower, they had no idea what they were truly facing. The Council fleet's weapons struck the Omega Dreadnought with enough force to shatter moons, but the great ship absorbed every attack without even slowing down. Captain Jake Harrison had become something beyond human understanding. His consciousness now existed across multiple dimensions, and he could perceive reality in ways that no biological mind was meant to comprehend. Your weapons cannot harm what exists outside your understanding of physics. Harrison's voice resonated through space itself. The sound carried harmonics that seemed to come from directions that did not exist in normal reality. You have spent 3,000 years believing that superior numbers and bigger guns make you invincible. Today you learn how wrong you were. Harrison's response to the alien attack was elegant in its simplicity. He decided that all Council weapons within a light-year radius were now incapable of harming any human vessel. Reality adjusted itself to match this new understanding. Every plasma beam that struck a human ship simply passed through harmlessly. Every quantum torpedo that should have destroyed a human cruiser instead exploded uselessly against empty space. Meanwhile, humanity's return fire remained devastatingly effective. Human weapons that had seemed pathetically weak compared to alien technology suddenly became unstoppable. Missiles that should have been intercepted by alien defense systems found their targets with impossible accuracy. Energy beams that should have been absorbed by alien shields cut through enemy hulls like paper. Admiral Morrison watched in amazement as his outnumbered fleet began to systematically destroy the Council's invasion force. All ships press the attack, he commanded. Show them what happens when humanity fights without restraint. But the real destruction was happening far from the battlefield. The Omega had begun its systematic tour of the 7 Empire homeworlds. Each capital system would receive a personal demonstration of humanity's new power. Each alien species would learn that the age of their dominance was over. Harrison arrived at the crystalline hegemony's capital world of Sharthul and studied the massive planet-sized crystal formation that housed 30 billion silicon-based beings. The entire world was one enormous crystal structure that had grown over millions of years. The crystalline beings lived within this structure and had built their entire civilization around manipulating crystal technology. Interesting, Harrison mused as his expanded consciousness analyzed the quantum bonds holding the planet together. Your entire world is essentially one massive tuning fork. I wonder what would happen if I adjusted the harmonic frequency just slightly. The change Harrison made was almost imperceptible. He altered the quantum vibration rate of the crystalline matrix by less than 1%. But the effect on Sharthul was immediate and catastrophic. The entire planet began to sing with a deep harmonic resonance that grew stronger with each passing moment. The crystal beings realized in horror that their world was turning into a massive musical instrument. The harmonic frequency that Harrison had introduced was slowly building toward a resonance cascade that would shatter every crystalline structure on the planet. 30 billion beings watched their homes begin to crack and sing with deadly music. Stop. This madness came the desperate transmission from crystalline Emperor Velthar. His voice carried the electronic harmonics of his species, but now it was filled with terror. We yield to humanity's power. We surrender completely. Please stop. The resonance cascade before our world destroys itself. But Harrison was no longer interested in surrender or negotiation. Humanity had endured centuries of abuse, while alien empires enslaved their children and destroyed their colonies. The time for mercy had passed when the Council decided to demand humanity's complete extinction. Your surrender is noted but irrelevant, Harrison replied. Humanity no longer seeks your submission. We seek your understanding that the age of empire is over forever. The resonance cascade continued to build. Across Sharthul, crystalline spires that had stood for millions of years began to crack and sing. The crystalline beings felt their bodies vibrating in harmony with their dying world. Some shattered immediately. Others fled in desperate attempts to escape the growing harmonic disaster. Harrison moved on to his next target. The Vorthan Confederacy had built their civilization around energy manipulation technology. Their capital, world of Nexus Prime, was protected by energy barriers that had never been breached in over 2,000 years. The Vorthans believed their mastery of energy made them invincible against any form of attack. The Omega materialized just outside the Vorthan energy barriers, and Harrison studied their construction with his enhanced perception. The barriers were incredibly sophisticated. They could absorb and redirect almost any form of energy weapon. They had protected the Vorthans through countless wars and made them confident that no enemy could ever threaten their homeworld. Harrison examined the barriers for exactly 3.7 seconds before reaching a conclusion. Energy shields are a physical impossibility in this region of space, he announced. Then he made reality agree with this new understanding. The barriers did not fail or get destroyed by any external force. They simply ceased to exist as reality rewrote itself to match Harrison's decision. 50 billion Vorthans suddenly found themselves defenseless. Their entire civilization had been built around energy manipulation technology that was now revealed to be useless against an enemy who could rewrite the laws of physics. Panic spread through the Vorthan leadership as they realized their invincible defenses had simply vanished. Impossible! Screamed high-energy manipulator Zephyron as he stared at sensor readings that showed nothing but empty space where their barriers had been. Our energy shields were powered by the cores of 3 stars. How can they simply not exist? Any more? Harrison's next target was the Saurian Empire's military stronghold of Warworld. The planet had been converted into one massive fortress, covering every square meter of its surface. Billions of Saurian soldiers trained there, preparing for wars of conquest across the galaxy. It was the symbol of their military might and their dream of universal domination. A world dedicated to preparing for war, Harrison observed as he studied. Warworld's defenses. How appropriate. Let me show you what real warfare looks like. Harrison decided that all metallic elements on Warworld would now exist in a quantum state of uncertainty. Every weapon, every piece of armor, every structural support beam began to phase randomly between existing and not existing. Saurian soldiers watched in terror as their weapons flickered in and out of reality. Buildings collapsed as their support structures became unreliable. The entire planet began to shake as its metallic core destabilized. Back in human space, Admiral Morrison's fleet had completely destroyed the Council's invasion force. 300 alien ships had been reduced to drifting wreckage. Not a single human vessel had been lost once Harrison had rewritten the rules of engagement. The surviving alien crews floated in escape pods, sending desperate messages to their home governments. "This is Fleet Admiral Zixathala," came a broken transmission from one of the escape pods. "The humans have developed weapons that defy all known physics. Our entire fleet has been destroyed by forces we cannot understand or counter. The age of Council dominance is over. Morrison received Harrison's final report as the Omega finished its tour of the Empire homeworlds. All 7 capital systems have been neutralized, Admiral. Their orbital defenses no longer exist. Their suns are dimming at calculated rates. Their populations are experiencing controlled catastrophic events that demonstrate humanity's new capabilities. The galaxy now understands what happens when our species is pushed beyond its limits. The age of alien empire was ending, and the age of humanity's protection of the innocent was about to begin. The question that remained was whether the galaxy would accept this new reality peacefully, or whether more demonstrations would be necessary. The chambers of the former Galactic Council on Haven Prime Station had never been so quiet. Admiral Morrison walked through the ornate halls where alien ambassadors had once made decisions that affected billions of lives across the galaxy. Now, most of those seats stood empty. The 7 great empires that had ruled for millennia lay broken and scattered to the solar winds. Only 3 representatives remained from the once mighty council. Emperor Velthar of the Crystalline Hegemony sat in his chair, but his body showed visible cracks from the harmonic disaster that had consumed his homeworld. High-energy manipulator, Zephyron of the Vorthan Confederacy, stared at his hands as if he could not believe his energy powers had proven useless. General Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire looked older than his species' natural lifespan as he contemplated his frozen homeworld. "The old order is finished," Morrison announced to the assembled representatives of hundreds of minor species. These were races that had been enslaved and oppressed by the great empires for thousands of years. Many had never been allowed to speak in council chambers before this day. Humanity claims no dominion over the galaxy. We seek no tribute, no slaves, and no subjugation of other species. But we will not tolerate the abuse of innocent beings ever again. Captain Jake Harrison materialized as a hologram beside Morrison. His form flickered between his original human appearance and something far more cosmic. The integration with the Omega had transformed him into a being that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. He was no longer entirely human, but he carried within his expanded consciousness the hopes and dreams of his entire species. "I have become the guardian of galactic peace," Harrison spoke, and his voice seemed to resonate from directions that did not exist in normal space. "As long as the Omega exists, as long as I exist within it, no empire will rise to oppress the weak again. This galaxy will know justice, or it will face the consequences of continued cruelty." Ambassador Thylon of the peaceful Altarian Republic stood up from his seat with tears in his large eyes. His people had been forced to give 90% of their agricultural output to feed the Zephyrian military for over 500 years. "Are you saying that the time of forced tribute is truly over? That my people can keep the food we grow for our own children?" Morrison nodded with a gentle smile. "Your people and all peaceful species are now under humanity's protection. Any attempt to force tribute or slavery will be met with immediate intervention by the Omega Dreadnought." Dr. Lisa Chen watched from the observation deck as the new galactic order took shape before her eyes. She had helped create the technology that made this moment possible, but the cost still haunted her dreams. Jake Harrison had sacrificed his humanity to become something greater. He would never again experience simple human pleasures like tasting food or feeling the warmth of sunlight on his skin. "Dr. Chen," came Harrison's voice, speaking directly into her mind through quantum communication. "Do not mourn for what I was. Celebrate what I have become. I can perceive beauty across dimensions that humans cannot imagine. I can feel the gratitude of every freed slave child in the galaxy. This transformation was not a loss, but an evolution." President Henry Davis addressed the galaxy from Earth through quantum relay networks that carried his message to every inhabited star system. "For 3,000 years, the strong have preyed upon the weak. Advanced civilizations have used their power to enslave and exploit those who could not defend themselves. That dark age ends today. Humanity offers its protection to all peaceful species. We welcome trade, knowledge, and friendship with those who come in peace." The president's expression grew stern as he continued his broadcast. "But to those who would Return to the old ways of conquest and oppression. We offer only this warning. Remember this day. Remember the hour when humanity deployed the Omega Dreadnought. Remember how empires that seemed eternal fell like dust before the fury of an awakened species that had finally said enough. The Omega itself had become more than just a ship. It was now humanity's promise and threat combined into one impossible vessel. It patrolled the major trade routes, appearing wherever aggression raised its ugly head. Pirates who had terrorized merchant vessels for decades found their ships disabled by technology they could not understand. Their weapons simply stopped working. When they tried to attack innocent traders, would-be conquerors discovered that their war fleets became powerless the moment they entered systems inhabited by peaceful species. Slavers watched in horror as the chains binding their captives dissolved at the molecular level. The Omega's influence extended across the galaxy, bringing hope to the oppressed and fear to those who would oppress others. Commander Ryan Brooks of the UES Liberty stood on his rebuilt bridge and received reports from across human space. Sir, the outer colonies are reporting that alien tribute collectors have stopped coming completely. The trade routes are opening up again. Our people can finally live without fear of sudden alien attacks. But the greatest change was in the attitudes of the galaxy's countless minor species. For the first time in millennia, they could dream of futures that did not include slavery or exploitation. Children who had been destined for alien work camps could now grow up free. Artists whose cultures had been suppressed could create without fear. Scientists could research for the betterment of their own people instead of being forced to develop weapons for their alien masters. The former Saurian General Krextal transmitted a message from his species' remnant fleet. Humanity has shown mercy where we showed none. We acknowledge that our empire was built on cruelty and conquest. We request permission to settle on uninhabited worlds where we can learn to live peacefully. Harrison's response came immediately. Permission granted, General. Your people will be monitored to ensure compliance with galactic peace protocols. Any return to aggressive behavior will result in immediate intervention. But those who genuinely seek redemption will find it under humanity's protection. Years passed and the galaxy slowly healed from millennia of oppression. Children across 1,000 worlds learned the story of the day humanity said no more, and backed up their words with technology that could rewrite reality itself. They learned that sometimes even the smallest and weakest species could find within themselves the power to change everything. Trading ships moved freely between star systems without fear of piracy. Scientific knowledge flowed openly between species that had previously been forbidden to communicate. Art and culture flourished as billions of beings discovered they could create beauty instead of being forced to produce tools of war. And in the deep void between stars, the Omega Dreadnought continued its eternal patrol. Harrison's consciousness had expanded beyond anything that could be called human, but he remembered his origins. He remembered growing up on a small farm on Earth. He remembered the taste of his mother's cooking and the sound of rain on the roof of his childhood home. I carry humanity's conscience within me, Harrison broadcast to the universe. I am the guardian of the innocent and the enemy of those who would harm them. The galaxy has learned to fear not humanity's cruelty, but humanity's justice armed with unlimited power. Perhaps that is the most terrifying force the universe has ever known. The age of empires built on conquest and slavery was over. The age of galactic civilization protected by humanity's watchful guardian had begun. In the end, it had taken just 1 hour for everything to change. 1 hour for humanity to deploy their ultimate weapon. 1 hour for ancient empires to fall, like dust before the wind of righteous determination. The galaxy would never be the same again.